It's Malcontented Minutes. And for Malcontented Minutes, this is the part of the show where Jennifer and I, 10 stories, 2 minutes each. We move as quickly as we can to unpack them. 1 minute to tell the story, 1 minute to unpack them. We wiggle maybe 30 or 45 seconds if something goes a little bit over. We're not like, you must do this in 1 minute. Now do it faster. 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 I'm Jewish. I'm allowed.
Oh, okay.
Uncomfortable. Okay, Jennifer, are we ready?
We're ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Clock is running. Our first story. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We have to stop. We have to stop this. We forgot. We forgot something to explain. Modded admins, go ahead and put up the poll. The reason this went right past me is we didn't do this on Thursday. You just did the 5. Mods and admins, pop up the link to the poll. At the end of the show, Jennifer and I will unpack the story that you want us to unpack and discuss more. Or if it's a video-based story, we'll play the video a second time. There's some stories that we always do that there's really nothing to unpack. It's just, here's a video of. If you want to see that video another time, you can go ahead and vote for that also. So mods and admins will be putting up the poll for that. You should listen to all 10 stories before you jump into the vote. And with that, Jennifer, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm giving myself a mulligan, like Trump got for overthrowing the government.
Yeah.
Starting the clock, story number 1. RuPaul Drag Race star Sherry Pie, a.k.a. Joey Guglielmelli, has been disqualified from the show after details emerged that he catfished at least 5 men into fake auditions for non-existent roles. In one case, one man even masturbated on a video as part of the requests made by Sherry Pie in the hopes of securing an acting gig. Victims include former classmates at SUNY Cortland in New York and a Nebraska acting group that he once worked with. Sherry Pie released a statement that said in part, and I quote, "I want to start by saying how sorry I am that I caused such trauma and pain and how horribly embarrassed and disgusted I am with myself. I know that the pain and hurt that I have caused will never go away, and I know that what I did was wrong." I lost my place when the timer went off. I was wrong and cruel. Until being on RuPaul's Drag Race, I never really understood how much my mental health and taking care of things meant. Sherry Pie is supposed to be on the Tamron Hall show to tell their side of the story, Jennifer, and there's huge outrage about it. I left you about 45 seconds to unpack it.
Yeah, that's gross. Using your position of authority to sexually exploit people that you see in a lesser position isn't acceptable in any circumstance, and you can't just pawn it off as a mental health issue. It's sexual exploitation in this day and age in the context of the Me Too movement and everything else that is going on. Relative to that, especially in the entertainment industry, I don't see any reason that they should get a pass on this. And I think it's absolutely disgusting. And I think catfishing is a bigger issue that, people need to be more aware of, especially if you're out there online dating or whatever it is that you're doing, engaging with people online. So yeah, this is pretty gross.
I agree. Jennifer, are you ready?
Yes.
The clock is running.
All right. So going back to RuPaul's Drag Race, this is a little bit of this is more of a sad than angering story. So Ari Gold, he's a New York City-based dance music artist and DJ, has died at 47 after a long battle with leukemia, according to several reports. So he was a trailblazing queer dance music artist. He sang with Diana Ross and Cyndi Lauper, collaborated with Boy George, and opened for Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan is amazing. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. But he also was very close with RuPaul, did some stuff with RuPaul's Drag Race. And RuPaul actually followed up after he was declared cancer-free in 2019 on his podcast. And so he was actually appeared in RuPaul's 2007 movie Star Booty and called him, quote, "the closest thing I've known to a mentor." So they were actually quite close. And after Gold's death, Peppermint 247, who was actually on RuPaul's Drag Race, gave a really nice tribute on Instagram, and also Laverne Cox. So this is a big kind of loss for the LGBTQIA community, and somebody who was very much invested in entertainment and not COVID related, but leukemia, F cancer, all that good stuff. So that's kind of the loss there. And
Well, the
Tyson.
first thing I have to say, Jennifer, is fuck cancer.
What's the F-bomb? This is written. This
Yes.
is written.
That's the first thing I have to say. The second thing that I have to say, it's interesting all of the angles here. With you, like you gave me a lot here to grab on.
Yeah.
I saw Shaka Khan in concert years ago and got a chance to meet her. Absolutely amazing individual and absolutely amazing in concerts. This is a sad story for the LGBTQIA community, and I know that Shaka Khan is a big ally of that community.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. We're going to go ahead now to story number 3. Dave Chappelle released a video calling out insurrectionists for their hypocrisy directed at Colin Kaepernick. Chappelle said in the video released on Friday, and I quote, "Watch the tapes," Chappelle said, referring to the riots. "Watch that crowd that told Colin Kaepernick he can't kneel during a football game trying to beat a police officer to death with an American flag." If you remember, if you don't remember this, Colin Kaepernick was an individual football player, NFL outstanding quarterback who started taking a knee during the playing of the national anthem. He was essentially blackballed by the NFL. No team will touch him now. He's considered radioactive because of this action.
Yeah.
And then when Black Lives Matter movement started, there were all these wails of, why can't they just protest peacefully? You know, like take a knee during the national anthem. And then we got to see what their view actually was on peaceful protests. Dave Chappelle getting very political, but he delivers it in an amazing way lately. Jennifer, I let you unpack it.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole Kaepernick thing has always been like a hot issue for me, mostly because, I mean, if you think critically about the original like national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, there are actually very offensive verses from the Star Spangled Banner that are cut out of its modern iteration that reference like the blood of slaves and some other really problematic things that people don't want to address because it doesn't fit in with that American exceptionalist narrative. So the fact that people were so up in arms at him kneeling during the national anthem as this sign of like, you know, very peaceful protest for all of the things that were going on within the Black community in the context of racial inequality, but also police violence and all of these other things. So I think Chappelle makes some really good points and interesting parallels here. And this has always been pretty much, I've never quite understood the outrage other than it's just a lack of education about what the Star Spangled Banner was, who it was written by, who it was written for, and, you know, just kind of like the excluding of the problematic verses people don't want to confront.
I have more thoughts on that, but we need to stick to the rules, so to speak. And if you want us to unpack that story, although I always say you should wait until we do all 10, but if you want to unpack that story, mods and admins, go ahead and drop that link one more time in there for the comments so people can see it and they get an opportunity to vote for theirs. And with that, Jennifer, we'll go ahead. We've got the clock is running.
All right, so back to white men exercising misogyny against women of color. We have Representative of Montana, Steve Daines, indicating that he will try to block the confirmation of Rep. Deb Haaland of New Mexico as Interior Secretary. He says, quote, "I am deeply concerned with the Congresswoman's support on several radical issues that will hurt Montana, our way of life, our jobs, and rural America, including her support for the Green New Deal and President Biden's oil and gas moratorium, as well as her opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline." He goes on to say, quote, "I'm not convinced the Congresswoman can divorce her radical views and represent what's best for Montana and all stakeholders in the West. Unless my concerns are addressed, I will block her confirmation," which is a really kind of professional way of saying, I don't like the fact that this Native woman is going to be in a position of authority and have some power over what's going to happen in our state, which used to be pretty much all Indigenous land and people. So my thoughts to Steve Daines of Montana are that.
So first of all, thanks, Montana. You had a very valid Democrat on the ticket there. Daines actually was considered not able to win or would be a close election. and you voted for Dane. So thanks for that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't quite understand what's so radical about the cabinet minister for, I say minister, it's the wrong word, but the Secretary of the Interior wanting to protect the interior. I'm missing something here. And then the last thing is, I don't understand why the Secretary of Interior, that we should have a problem that she wants to address the systemic corruption in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which quite frankly makes HUD look like it's run by a Boy Scout troop. And I don't mean a creepy Boy Scout troop with a dirtball Boy Scout leader, like the nice Boy Scout troop.
Yeah, absolutely. This just smacks with misogyny and racism. So, like, I'm just kind of done with it.
All right, story number 5. Story number 5 takes us to Ireland and the story of a golden retriever named Nisha. Nisha was out for a walk with his owners in the Wicklow Mountains of Ireland when Nisha and his dog brother Harley saw a deer. They both took off running. Harley came back. Nisha didn't. Despite search efforts that included drones putting out bedding, hiking, people searching, after 8 days, Nisha's owners started, and miserable weather, Nisha's owners started to accept that Nisha was probably lost forever. This brings us to Dr. Sierra Nolan and Jean-Francois Bonnet were out for a hike in frigid conditions when they came across a terrified, exhausted, and shivering Nisha who had now been missing for 2 weeks. She was so weak she couldn't even stand up. So Dr. Bonnet carried Nisha over 6 miles and then drove her to an emergency vet. Nisha was dehydrated, cut, had lost a lot of weight, but outside of that, was healthy. They consider it's a miracle she's alive, and she is back home with her grateful owners. There's your good news for the day.
Yeah, there's not a lot of unpack there other than to be like, oh, I mean, what a good story. What a good thing to happen for this dog. Like, I don't have any really thing to unpack there.
It's a great story, right? Spam those hearts. There you go. There's what there is to that story. Spam those hearts for Nisha the dog and her 2-week odyssey in the wilderness of Ireland. And if Nisha could speak, Jennifer,
yes, absolutely,
would have probably a pretty fascinating survival story to tell.
Yes, very much so.
All right, you can start with story number 6.
Okay, so this is another feel-good story. So the University of Cincinnati and Xavier got into this tip war over the last month that began when a fan left a $1,001 tip at a Keystone Bar and Grill, along with a note encouraging others to keep the tip war going. So of course, this is a competition between the University of Cincinnati and Xavier. And so they were consistently topping each other's generous tips at local restaurants. And about over the course of 1 month, $34,000 have been raised to support restaurant workers in Cincinnati hurt by the pandemic. So it all started at Zips Cafe in early January when Xavier alumnus visiting the school with his daughter left a $1,000 tip on a $54 bill, along with a note for his fellow Xavier alumni server. And it said, quote, "Please share this tip with all of your employees as they work so hard and are dealing with COVID. Go Xavier," end quote. The man wrote. And so this continued on between Xavier and the University of Cincinnati until they raised over $34,000. And I think this is an absolutely wonderful story. And it all went to restaurant workers, who are working their butts off during COVID to, get people who don't feel like cooking, food.
It's a great story. See, I'm in the same boat. There isn't much to unpack outside of that, except for what a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I've had highs and lows this week in the good of the world and the bad of the world. And I still choose, Jennifer, to go, there's good in the world out there.
Yes.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead, I guess, and we'll restart the clock. And I'm going to go on to story number 7. The CDC has released a study that visits to hospital emergency rooms were down from June 2019 to May 2020, but visits for overdoses specifically were up 45%, and opioid overdoses were up 29%. Given the time range involved, this can't all be accounted for COVID-19. People have avoided going to the ER out of fear of catching COVID when going to the hospital, and drug use due to isolation and depression has definitely gone up. Still, the period of the increase only represents a few months of lockdown. It's worth noting, Jennifer, that despite a promise by former social media icon Donald Trump when he was president, he would address the opioid crisis, the numbers only increased during his time in the White House. And I'll add one other thing that's not in the show notes, and only some token fines were handed out to companies that architected the crisis in the first place. You get 60 seconds to unpack that, and I'm sure you're going to have some choice comments.
Yeah, I mean, 60 seconds? Thanks. No, I mean, this is something that continues to be an issue that has gone, unaddressed. And I mean, of course, COVID is going to contribute to an escalating use of drugs and other coping mechanisms of all kinds based on the isolation. And we know that mental health has tanked for a lot of people during this period of isolation, during the pandemic. But the fact that this has gone largely unaddressed for the last 4 years, and these companies that are architecting these addictions have paid little to no consequences for that, is so egregious and gross. And you have to think about the number of people who've lost their lives as a result of this. And these companies are essentially murderers. And the people that are choosing to stand behind it and do nothing, the Trump administration for 4 years doing nothing, are in the same boat. They're murderers.
Yeah, basically. And not just the Trump administration. Some of this lands on the feet of the Bush 43 administration, and a lot of it falls at the feet of the Obama administration. Yeah. There's plenty of love to go around. And that's all I'll say, because if you want us to talk more about this, you can vote in the poll and we'll unpack that one more. Jennifer, you can go on to story number 8.
Okay, so I am a huge UFC fan. Anybody who knows me knows that I love UFC. And so I watch UFC Fight Night faithfully every weekend. I pay for the pay-per-views because it is the one little small luxury in my life. So this weekend was UFC 258. And there was this great fight. Julian Marquez, he wins his match at UFC 258 and then comes out afterwards and it's like, Miley Cyrus, I want you to be my Valentine. And I think we have a little bit of a clip, David, of that.
I've been waiting 31 months to get on this damn mic and to call these people out right now. It's my time to shine. So Miley Cyrus, will you be my Valentine's?
Miley, you heard the call out.
Let's go.
It's your turn to respond.
Jennifer!
I
Who's in the videos?
Was not me. Was not me. That was not the Seattle Fire Department.
That was not the Seattle Fire Department. That was ESPN Plus.
That was ESPN Plus. So Marquez, he calls himself the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is really weird. He's like Kansas, corn-fed guy with no tattoos, which is really weird for UFC. And he comes out and he's like, Miley Cyrus, I want you to be my Valentine. She responds and she's like, if you shave MC into your chest hair, then I'm all yours. And then he came back and was like, okay, only if you get a henna tattoo of a Cuban Missile Crisis somewhere. She has yet to respond. Everybody's like, dude, you blew your shot. He's like, no, I still have a shot. I don't think he does or ever really did, but whatever. Live your dream, dude.
All right, so here's my unpack comment on this. One, I would never picture you for a UFC fan. Yes. That aside, number 2, learn something new. Yes. Number 2, he has almost no chest hair in that video. So I think that was kind of a, no. Change your genetics and get a hairy Jewish man chest or Italian man chest. Then we can talk.
Yes. Also, I have a mean right cross. So the UFC thing makes sense.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and do number 9. And we're going to have to fire the video editor on this one too, because I can tell you it's going to be screwed up. But here you go. Enjoy some animals loving life in the Oregon Zoo with all the snow and cold.
Tongues move up. Good boy, bud.
Oh.
All right, Jennifer, I get to keep my job for one more day, and you have 40 seconds to unpack that.
I got nothing. That was adorable. We already talked about red pandas before the show. Yeah. So I got nothing. I feel like I would have got, was that a sea lion that was rolling?
I think so. Yes, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I'm not up on my seal mammals.
Yeah. I just know because they kind of look like, I know if I hold my pug's ears down, he looks like a sea lion. So,
I actually would have stuff to unpack. Malcontents, we're to story number 10. After you hear story number 10, it's your turn to go ahead and vote. And with that, Jennifer, we'll reset the clock. Story number 10.
okay, so this is actually some more good news. And so this first came from Indian Country Today. And it's 6 Indigenous artists have won $50,000 prizes for their, quote, bold artistic vision. And each is honored for, quote, inspiring curiosity, empathy, and action toward building a more honest and just world. These 6 artists are from all over, Native nations all over the country. So we have Kanuba Hanska Luger, Nathan P. Jackson, who's actually Tlingit, and Tlingit peoples are of the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, Canada, and 4 others. And as Luger notes, and he was the correspondent from Indian Country Today who actually broke this story, it's important to see awards in context with outside impact. Actually, Luger is one of the artists. My apologies. I got excited. So it's important to see awards in context with the outsized impact of the pandemic on Native communities. So this is really important because COVID-19 is killing 1 in 475 Native Americans, which is a higher and faster death rate than in any other community, according to new analysis by APM Research Lab published by The Guardian. So the pandemic script makes it both harder and more urgent to surface stories of strength right now. And while this creative funding is like by no means a substitute for immediate fixes to this pandemic and what it has done to Native nations across the country, it's an all of the above efforts, and art as an amplifier and material medical solutions as demand that tells the fuller picture. So these people are getting these $50,000 awards. I'm sorry, I'm like super excited about the story. Awards to create this art within their communities, and they're kind of using it to kind of like not only push back against the ways in which Native peoples have been treated within the larger settler community, but it's kind of like resistance to the pandemic, resistance to settler colonialism, and it's a really, really great thing. And as you can tell, I'm super, super excited about it.
You are super excited. I was left no time to unpack it, so I'm just going to say I love it. Malcontents, this is the time. The polls are open. Mods and admins, if you could go ahead, drop the link into the poll. For the poll, I mean, into the chat. Go ahead and vote. Vote for the story that you want Jennifer and I to unpack. I would say that we have stuff that we could unpack on almost all of the stories there. I think there's one we would struggle to unpack a little bit, other than what a great story. Yeah. So, Jennifer, you want to do Black History Month while we're still in Malcontented Minutes?
Yes. So Black History Month, and I'm coupling up. Oh, can I talk or sorry? So Black History Month, we've been doing this every happy hour, just kind of highlighting some kind of book, art, something created by Black people throughout the month. This one ties into President's Day, and this is a book called Never Caught: The Washington's Relentless Pursuit of Their Runaway Slave Ona Judge by African-American female historian Erica Armstrong Dunbar. And this is a fantastic book, and it details how George and Martha Washington actually relentlessly pursued this runaway slave. Washington was elected president. He reluctantly left behind Mount Vernon to serve in Philadelphia, which was the temporary seat of the government at that time. But Washington was a slaveholder, and there's a lot of things coming out now about Washington and the ways in which he interacted with his slaves. There's that whole kind of like myth about his wooden dentures when actually some of them were composed of slave teeth. But they pursued this young woman throughout her life. And because of the 1793 Fugitive Slave Act, she was actually, even though she escaped, she was actually what was considered a dowry slave throughout her life, and a fugitive, and her children were fugitives throughout their life. And this is an amazing book. And we're talking about historical nuance, and we were talking about the ways in which you cannot excuse the bad things that people did in favor of highlighting the good. So this is, George Washington, primary founding father that everybody associates with the founding fathers, relentlessly pursuing a slave along, with his wife. And he actually leveled his political connections to try and hunt her down and find her. So this is an amazing book. Our wonderful mods have the link to it. You guys should check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We say this every time we do the Black History Month. Jennifer and I made a conscious decision that her and I, as two pasty white people coming up here and going, let's talk to you about Black history. And here's the topic we're going to cover. Yeah, not our lane, because we're pasty white people. So instead, what Jennifer has been doing is identifying pieces that you can go to watch, read, invest in to learn about Black history, but most importantly, pieces that have been created, researched, and written by the Black community specifically. So you are hearing it from a Black voice, and you're also supporting Black scientists, Black researchers, Black authors, Black video producers, Black documentarians, depending on what we highlight on the particular day. And Jennifer, I deeply appreciate you doing that for us.
No problem. I hope people
All right, I think we're going to do a
them.
little pause for the cause, and we're going to jump right into our next section. Vote, vote, vote. Vote early, vote you can't vote multiple times. You've set it up that way. Jennifer, I'm just getting a call right now. Hello? Sidney Powell, what do you want?
Oh, Jesus.
I promise you there is no cheating in the poll. Who? He's watching us? He said I'm a bad reporter. He's upset about the social media icon thing? Say you're going to sue me? Talk to me later. All right, Malcontents, pause for the cause.
Hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and were like...
The police to be held accountable for their actions. We're not going without. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Can You Hear Us is our documentary about the events that happened on June 1 to July 4th in Seattle. Events that have changed the city and will forever be an indelible ink on the story of Seattle. Our patrons have already had access to it, and as our new patrons have come on board, we've given them immediate access at any level. Can You Hear Us is going to be released in about 2 weeks. It will be released for the entire world to see, so that you can see the story. It might be delayed a day or two on that, because as we've told a couple of times, we found about 30 hours of other video that either is higher quality than what is in the documentary or adds to the story of the documentary. We need to add those sections in. And I know I am really excited to get this out to the general audience, and I know I'm really excited to get these extra clips in there.